those blind spots that we have when we are in our discovery call. So this is what top 10, top 5% sellers are looking for. And if you're aiming to be in that group, then this is definitely going to help you. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Give me 1 second. Okay, so there we go. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go to the Clear Deal Validator. So Clear is a qualification framework that I developed. And what we're doing here is we are qualifying this, and how this is supposed to be used is this will be used at every stage of your deal process, right? So we're looking at these stages in Clear, and Clear stands for Consequence Leverage Economics, Alignment, and Readiness. Okay, I don't have time to teach on that, but that's what it stands for. And you'll be able to see the output. So we're using this throughout the deal lifetime, throughout the deal cycle, to see if we actually have a real deal or if it's just smoke and mirrors, right? Or if what we missed, right? So here we go. So I'm going to upload this discovery call. And then I'm going to give it a few simple instructions. Again, it's pretty complete, but I'm going to give it some instructions so you can see how I do it, okay? So I'm going to say, hi, I have a discovery, call transcript. I need you to analyze for me. Please anonymize. Do you understand? Okay. And then I'm going to hit upload. And it's going to return back to me a lot of data. So here we go. So it's saying, yes, I understand. I'm going to anonymize everything, et cetera, analyze the opportunity using Clear. Okay, so here we go. And it's going to go on a little bit. Now, I need to forewarn you that this is very, very complete and very extremely detailed. As I said before, I programmed it myself, I developed it myself, and it's a very, very high standard. So I'm going to tell you how to use the output a little bit later, but let's just get right into the meat of it. And it's still, as you can see, it's still working and it's still returning the analysis. So once it's done, we're going to analyze some of the specific topics, and you'll see how the data comes out and how it actually does the analysis. It's very detailed, it's very thorough, and it's intuitive in the way it lays it out. Okay, so here's the deal summary. So it's going to give you a deal summary of the deal. So who's involved? So this is facilities, software, in public sector. The prospect is using a competing facilities management platform. So this is what it is. It gives you the primary buyer persona, the current stage. So this is great because it's in early discovery, strategic exploration, and here's the compelling context. So a lot of times, we'll hear what's the compelling event, right? So I programmed in here, it's going to give you what the compelling context is if we have that information. If not, it's going to skip it altogether. And it's saying this was not a transactional call, it evolved in strategic conversation. So this is the areas that it identified: operational efficiency, workforce constraints, KPI architecture, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to give you some information about your prospect, right? And so what we're looking for here is not talk time. We're not looking for talk time. We're not looking for who said what. We're looking for the context of the conversation. We're seeing if there's a business problem. We're seeing if there's alignment throughout the organization. Do we have leverage? So are we talking to the right person? Do we have economics involved? So is there a compelling reason, a cost of inaction involved? Did we uncover that? And are they really ready to go forward, right? Because that is the bottom line. When we are qualifying, we're looking for the readiness of the prospect to continue with us or move to the next stage, okay? So here's the framework evaluation. So the consequence, here's the evidence. So it says there's very real operational pain. So that's good. It uncovered that during the conversation. You see some of the details here: budget cuts in personnel and capital, high work order volume per tech, existing platform transition frustrations, and so forth and so on. And then it talks about what the buyer actually said. He emphasized work overload, right? Some overtime, systems friction, right? This is very, very important information. So if we are not getting this, or we are not setting ourselves up in the first 5 minutes of the qualification to be seen as a trusted advisor, or someone that can actually solve problems, or we care about our buyer and what they're going through and what they need solved, then we're gonna lose the deal, right? So we want to start uncovering this stuff right away, especially when we're qualifying. So here's the gist of it, some of it. So it's going to give you the weaknesses and some of the missing information. So not just what we miss, but what's incomplete, what is weak in the deal, so that we can start gathering more information, so we can strategize maybe with our sales manager, or we can do some research ourselves to figure out what do we miss and how can we get that information. So it says, despite strong operational pain, limited evidence that replacing the current platform is an active executive priority, that they're committed to changing vision. This is the gist of it right here. I could really stop right now, because this is the gist of what we are missing, or what is weak. When a buyer contacts us, or we do outreach and we hear they want to switch from their current platform, a lot of times we get happy ears without really qualifying what does that mean, and are they committed to going forward with this, right? Because there's all kinds of things that are blockages to a buyer actually switching platforms, or switching providers, or switching machinery, if you will, if you are in manufacturing, right? So this is some of the weak points, right? Organization is not committed to changing. There's little evidence that leadership has approved the initiative, or the current pain is severe enough to justify switching costs. I'm going to resist the urge to teach on this, because, that's what I do. But I do want you to understand that this is one of the big blockers, and one of the things that sellers miss a lot, right? When we hear that a buyer wants to switch, it's not just switching, right? It's the pain of switching. It's the lift that they have to go through. Are they prepared to do that? And does it justify the cost or the pain or what have you? Okay. So the buyer stated they have another contract that they're in for another 1 to 2 years. The staff is already tired from one migration. This is all very, very good information. So you can see that here. Then it'll give you a strength rating for each section. So CLEAR, it's going to give you a strength rating. So this is moderate to strong. Pain is real. Urgency to change vendors, not yet proven. So then it gets into leverage. Do you have the access required to push this deal along? It gives you some of the positive signals. You can read that on your own time. It'll give you some of the weaknesses and the missing information. And then it'll give you some additional information. Buyer delegated scheduling authority to an assistant, i.e. a gatekeeper. So that is additional information that you can use, you need to have. The conversation was highly relationship oriented and philosophical, and the seller became somewhat reactive and intellectually outmatched during portions of the call. So this relates directly to business acumen, confidence, etc. So that's a whole nother, this is a whole nother life, and I want to go into that. I'm resisting the urge to do that. The strength rating here is moderate, access level is strong, actual buying leverage is uncertain, okay? So these are some of the things that we are missing as sellers when we are in a conversation or conversations with our buyer, or in follow-up conversations, okay? So here, economics, evidence present, there's substantial macroeconomic context. So then it gives you all of the information that the buyer gave us. And what do we do with that information? We discuss some of the value areas. Where are our weaknesses? No quantified ROI, COI, no cost of inaction analysis, no budget discussion, no pricing discussion. All these things that we're missing, right? And this is not, I don't want you guys to feel bad, right? This is not uncommon. This is not rare. This is just what we do when we're in a high pressure selling situation. We want to make the sale. We have our agenda in our brain, but when we're doing that, we're not really paying attention to the conversation at hand, and we're not really leading the buyer. We're not connecting the dots for them. Okay. So these are all the areas that we miss. Most importantly, buyer frame the environment as financially constrained, which matters. Okay, so that means it gives you an analysis of this also. Even if value exists, funding a replacement may be politically difficult, right? So now we're talking about all the politics involved. We're talking about competing priorities, maybe having to sell this internally to other people or maybe even a committee, right? So this is all valuable information. Strength rating, weak to moderate, economic pain exists. Economic justification has not yet been established, okay? So alignment, where we're talking about multi-threading and getting to power, access to power, right? Access to decision makers or people that have veto power. So evidence is present. So the buyer talked about all these things. Multiple operational groups are involved in the ecosystem. So likely we're talking about having to sell this in a committee situation, right? Buyer appears respected and cross-functional influence, so that's good. Weaknesses, no evidence yet of organizational consensus. This is what we need to know. So this is all very, very good information. This creates a strong possibility that some internal stakeholders may resist another change initiative, right? Because it said earlier, remember, that they were worn out and tired. So we may or may not even have a deal here, right? So it's weak to moderate with the strength rating. Readiness, evidence present. So we got some positive indicators, agree to a follow-up meeting, show curiosity, etc. Weaknesses is where the deal becomes structurally weak, may still be under contract. In fact, they are. Current staff are fatigued, budget pressure, and timing. Okay, so there's no buying timeline that we uncovered any of these things. Okay, so in the final analysis, this deal is kind of dying, partially because of what the seller did or didn't do, but also just because it feels like an exploration. It feels like a kicking the tires type of call, right? Which we need to have that information in order to strategize for the next communication, whether that's a phone call, whether that's an email, like whatever it is, okay? So strength rating is weak, so they are not ready. That's the bottom line, right? So here's another area that I programmed into the GPT, and this is super important, right? Because most of our buying decisions are made on an emotional basis. I don't care what you're selling or what you're buying. It could be widgets, it could be manufacturing equipment, it could be technology, software, consulting, whatever. Buyer motivation and personal stakes. This is so important, because if your buyer doesn't have some skin in the game, they don't have a personal reason for wanting this to go through, or an emotional reason, or they might have it, but it just goes right over our heads, right? We don't uncover it. This tool is going to help you uncover that. It detects what the buyer said, the context of it, and it analyzes that, and it'll give you that, okay? So this is super important, so pay attention to this. So this is one of the strongest parts of the opportunity. So he demonstrated ownership, frustration, etc. Some signs of the personal stakes. So he's concerned about his workforce burned out, the inefficient systems, the desire to improve his personal effectiveness, et cetera, et cetera. He has strong opinions about software evolution. So that is something that if we have additional conversations with this buyer, that we need to make sure that we address, right? So he also repeatedly framed issues in systemic terms. This is really, really important. Personal motivation appears more strategic, intellectual than commercial. So we still need to determine whether the buyer actually wants to drive the initiative or just enjoys talking about the transformation, right? So this is directly tied to readiness. Is this organization ready to move forward, or even ready to start exploring what a transformation or what a switch might mean and or entail, and the benefits of it? Okay, so here it's going to give you some of the structural risks in the op. We have an existing vendor that's already in place, so how are we going to deal with that? Here are some of the risks. It's going to give you that. We have not talked about economics at all, right? So that is so important. This is very, very interesting. And I find this a lot where I've had multiple sellers tell me that they are uncomfortable with talking about the commercials, but it's really, really important when your buyer's already talking about it. We need to start delving into it and talking about it. So this was completely missed. The seller didn't quantify labor savings, efficiency gains, cost reductions, these kinds of things. Without quantified economics, this is just talk. This is just a conversation. It's strictly conceptual and it's not even really real yet. So we're missing this within the conversation. It's a single-threaded relationship, which is already a deal risk. Number 5, seller lost strategic control at times. So the buyer dominated large portions of the conversation philosophically and strategically. So this is not talk time. This is not looking at your recording, your gong call or whatever, and looking at talk time and dissecting the crap out of that, right? It is understanding what's the context of the conversation. Who's talking about what? Who's dominating different sections of the conversation, right? And what do those conversations look like? So it says the seller followed the buyer's intellectual direction, was reactive, which happens, and drifted away from structured discovery. So part of the art of doing discovery or doing a deeper qualification, which is really what this is being able to not go down rabbit holes, right? It's very, very tempting with your buyer. Like we need to be able to redirect them to what really matters, to the problems at hand, to what we're discussing, the risks to organization, to them personally, et cetera. That is an art, and we don't need to go down these rabbit holes, right? Because then it sucks up valuable time. It will give you, the tool is going to give you recommended actions. So recentering the next meeting around operational outcomes, which is some of what the buyer's concerned about. Quantify economic impact. So building a business case around these things that the buyer said was really important. Without quantified value, this deal will stall. It's telling you, you don't have a real deal here unless you go back and do these things. Map the buying committee early. So it's giving you really valuable action steps. Explore contract timing, which is this whole thing could just fall apart. Like right now, it's not even real. It kind of is, but kind of isn't, right? So if you had this conversation with a buyer, you got off the call, you're like, oh, that was really great. But when you analyze the transcript, okay, you say that was really great. Then I'm going to validate it. I'm going to pop it into the deal validator and see, are my instincts correct? And you get this stuff and you're like, oh, I missed a whole hell of a lot. And I can do a lot with this and use this to structure the next conversations or strategize for what the next step should be. Okay? So it's giving you all of this is saying the deal may be too early, and that is not a bad thing. So if it is too early, if we're outside the buying cycle, then we can just strategize. We can still continue to build the relationship, give things of value. And then when they're ready, then we'll be the first person that the buyer thinks of, right? So this is not a bad thing. We're going to position around ease of transition. And it's going to give you the overall deal assessment. So here's the overall assessment of this deal. It's an early strategic op, moderate risk, positive indicators. It gives you major risk, which we definitely need to address. And here's the bottom line. The bottom line is this is not yet a qualified, active buying opportunity. So what does this mean for you as a seller? What it means is this should not be in the forecastable stage. I don't care if you did a demo already, which you shouldn't have, but if you did, I don't care. It shouldn't go to the stage in your CRM where the deals are then being forecasted, because you're going to get burned if this is on the forecast and it doesn't happen, which it won't if you put it on there at this point. Okay, so it's going to help you do that. It's going to help you avoid forecasting deals that aren't ready yet. So it's currently strategically interesting, but it is low certainty. Okay, so the next 1 or 2 conversations will determine what happens. Okay, so as you can see, we're not analyzing for talk time. We're not analyzing for did this feel good. We're not forecasting based on vibes and all these things. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, because the GPT will talk to you. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask it a couple of questions, and I'm going to ask it to assess the risk to this deal for me based on a couple of different things. Okay, So based on this deal, what is the risk? So I'm going to ask it to uh, put a number on the risk if these two things don't happen, right? These are the most important things. Cost of inaction is not quantified, the COI, and we don't have access, we can't get access to more decision makers and or influencers. Okay, so I'm asking it to rate both parts. So let's see what we get. Okay, so if we don't quantify this, we don't talk about the commercials, we accept service level answers, and it's kicking out a lot of data. Again, it's very, very complete. You're going to get a lot of data that you can use, and I'm going to show you how to use that a little later. Okay, so cost of inaction is not quantified, risk rating 9 of 10. This is a major structural weakness in this deal. And I chose the cost of inaction because it's most sellers are missing these things, right? We may have a very high level overview, a high level idea, but we're not delving deep into the commercials, into the numbers and what it means to the organization financially. So here's why the risk is extremely high. It's going to give you the details on that. So you can use this to strategize. Right now, the deal sounds like we're frustrated, but not like this is causing X and Y. Oh my God, we need to fix this now. That's the part that's missing, and that's buyer motivation, right? And that's uncovering some of the emotional part, but also some of the operational piece and the financial. So it's all three of those things together. Additionally, the buyer is curious and strategic. They consume a lot of time, right? So we can be, this is very interesting. We can be in a very engrossing conversation where it feels deep and it feels like we're getting somewhere because they're back and forth. But if a buyer is intellectually curious, and it's not a bad thing, right? Now it's a double-edged sword, then we can feel like we really got somewhere and it's really happening and we have more momentum that we really do, but it's false momentum sometimes, right? Like 80% of the time, it ends up being false momentum. So a very deep, deep, deep conversation doesn't necessarily mean the deal is qualified and it's going to go forward, right? So it's saying without the quantified cost of inaction, urgency is abstract, procurement is weak, and internal politics support becomes difficult. And it's going to tell you how to lower the risk. So not only are you going to get what the risk is, what does it look like, but you're going to get ways to lower the risk, okay? So we're going to get measurable impact, i.e. the numbers. Okay, so it's talking about that. Now, number two part of this, lack of access to decision makers or influencers, 8.5 out of 10. So that means this deal is going nowhere if we don't get this, okay? Or we don't address this. And it may take some time. Granted, it may take some time, but it's time we have to take. So this is also severe risk, going to give you why. It's going to give you a very detailed explanation. And then it's going to break it down. Single-threaded risk, the deal will collapse. False champion risk, false champions. How many times have we heard this? This is very, very interesting. I see this quite a lot in transcripts and like when I'm just talking to sellers and leaders alike. So the buyer is highly engaged intellectually, but not enough evidence yet that they are actively driving a purchase, politically mobilizing support. So action, right? Action is what counts. And a lot of times we have, when we're in conversations, and even sometimes we pull the transcript, we have a false sense of action, right? Action counts more than, what we're talking about, right? So I like to say that buyer intent or action counts more than words, right? So we're looking at what the intent is. What's the intent behind the words? And you can only get that if you're dissecting the conversations. This may currently be not strategic and not a buying process. It'll give you that directly, okay? And it gives you another one, procurement IT. None of these has surfaced yet. The seller has little visibility into the decision path. Existing vendor entrenchment, it's a big one, especially when you're talking about the buyer saying they want to move, we don't really pay attention to that. We don't understand what that means. Okay, and this is the combined, it'll give you a table, right? So again, this is very, very detailed and very, very important. Okay, so you can see from this, if we just did the call, and let me just stop sharing. Again, these are custom GPTs that I developed. If you want those, I'm going to drop a resource in the comments. So I'm going to stop sharing here. Okay, so if we just had the conversation and we just looked at the recording, or we just looked at the phone call, we might have even used AI to ask it some questions. We're still not getting a good overall idea of not just what we missed, but the strategy behind it, what we need to get, and what the potential next steps are. And deal risk is really huge when we're talking about, the era that we're in, like with AI and, all the economics and everything. We need to be fairly certain of what we need to do inside the deal. So that custom GPT, the clear deal validator, is going to help you be more precise, and it's going to help you strategize better so you can close more. Okay. And what I have for you today is I have a resource. It's called Fix the First Five. It's going to help you fix the first 5 minutes of your discovery call so you start off on the right foot, getting the right information, building that relationship with your buyer so that the deal that you have in front of you, it's either qualified and it's going to move on, you need to get some more information, or it's not happening, and it's totally fine if that's the case. But we need to know how to qualify better, faster, and earlier so that we don't waste our time and we don't waste our sales managers or VPs or CROs time with deals in the forecast that aren't happening, right? So my goal is to help you maximize your income and your impact. I'm going to drop that resource, Fix the First Five, in the comments below. If you have any questions about the custom GPT or the clear qualification framework, I also have a overall methodology called Scale. Don't have time for that. But if you want that, please shoot me in the comments, shoot me a couple of comments or questions, and I'm happy to answer those. So thank you. I hope this was really helpful, and I will see you next time.